I'm Rantasmo, and She-Devil needs more gay. The following contains spoilers for some stuff. It's time to talk about gay icons. There's an interesting relationship between gay men and female celebrities. It could be argued that the meager presence of positive gay male role models in the media led many gay men to seek out the logical next best thing, otherwise known as the diva. The Barbara, the Liza, the Oprah, the Plava Laguna, and any other female icon who, for whatever reason, has a bountiful gay fan base. Not all divas are created equal, however. While they're usually thought of as gorgeous, glamorous fashionistas and tastemakers, there are a lot of other classes of diva. There's the tabloid diva, the nerdy diva, but one category of diva that's somewhat underrated is what I like to call the cool aunt. We all know the cool aunt. She makes her own jewelry. She collects flamingos. She lets us stay up and watch PG-13 movies. She's kooky and fun, but also down to earth and realistic. I think this particular archetype resonates with people because so many of us have known someone in our lives kind of like that. We love you, Aunt Diane Keaton. The movie I'm looking at today puts together two powerhouse divas who have built much of their careers on slightly different variations of the cool aunt persona. 1989's She-Devil is kind of the middle sibling of comedy movies. It didn't do very well, and I think it's mostly one of those movies that you see on cable late at night and maybe watch part of. Those who have at least heard of this movie might be surprised to learn that it was originally a book, which was also turned into an award-winning BBC miniseries. More on that later. She-Devil was also Meryl Streep's first real comedic film role. Up until this point, she was not really known for starring in laugh-a-minute chuckle fests. It sort of solidified her as a funny, quirky character, and as a budding cool aunt, though she didn't really blossom as such until much later. Aunt Meryl, stop dancing, you're embarrassing us! If She-Devil has one saving grace, it's gotta be Meryl Streep's performance. That's right, I said it. I think that Meryl Streep is good at acting. She's hilariously over-glamorous, and she mugs for the camera in all the right ways. She plays almost a parody of that glitzy diva persona. A really interesting antagonist that contrasts nicely with our dowdy anti-hero protagonist played by Roseanne Barr. Roseanne has more or less made a career out of being a battle axe, but a sympathetic battle axe. Less mean and more no-nonsense. She don't take no guff. She's a cool aunt with an edge. The story is one of envy, betrayal, and revenge. Roseanne plays Ruth, a moderately hideous housewife whose husband, Bob, is stolen away by beautiful romance novelist Mary Fisher. But rather than fall into despair, Ruth takes matters into her own hands and cleverly manipulates both Bob and Mary into a living nightmare, forcing them to deal with obnoxious familial dependence, and eventually driving them apart by sending Bob to prison. When you look at She-Devil side by side with the British miniseries from 3 years prior, entitled The Life and Loves of a She-Devil after the book, it makes for a really good demonstration of how you can take basically the same story, but alter the tone in such a way that it ends up completely different. I will say that the American movie is a little more consistently funny. Again, thanks largely to Streep, but also her butler, who, while most definitely is not a gay character, in a way he's almost the closest we get.
You're still the butler, so get in there and get to work.
I may be the butler, but I'm not the maid.
Also, hello Ed Begley Jr.'s ass. Nice to meet you. But the series is closer to the book in that it's a considerably darker comedy, even though much of the dialogue and events are almost exactly the same.
How could telling a man that you love him possibly scare him off?
How can telling a man you love him frighten him off?
It's much more like a soap opera, and it takes itself a lot more seriously. Oh, and does Ruth here look familiar to you? She should.
am not going. Why not?
You'll notice it's called the life and loves of a she-devil. Loves because in this story, Ruth achieves her revenge largely through the seduction of powerful men, which she turns out to be quite good at in spite of her looks. I think it's her force of personality or something, with which she can conjure forth flames. It also makes Ruth much less sympathetic towards the end, and Mary Fisher slightly more so. In the American movie, Ruth gets her revenge, and we're supposed to feel good about it. She does this walk of triumph in her 80s business dress, and she's like, yeah, I'm great. And her meddling seems to have turned Mary Fisher into something resembling a better person, or at least a more pragmatic one. But in the British series, Ruth doesn't just humble Mary, she actually drives her to madness and death. Like, there's this big, crazy symbolic scene where she's basically thrown out the window by her own romance novel. When her idealistic vision of love is corrupted by harsh reality, it quite literally kills her. Meanwhile, Ruth buys her house and gets plastic surgery, even going so far as to shorten her legs so that she looks just like Mary. And she starts luring men away from their wives, becoming everything she's ever hated, without even seeming to realize it. And that's it. That's how it ends. With everyone psychologically destroyed. Camp is a genre that's bound to come up a lot when you talk about gay culture. But it takes a franchise like this one, if She-Devil can be called a franchise, to show just how diverse camp can be. It can be goofy and over the top, but it can also be dark and genuinely compelling. It may be silly, but it can also be serious. And I may be the butler, but I'm not the maid.